anything that has to involve a lawyer is, unfortunately, it's slow. Even though we try to move very quickly and we try to handle everything
It
as
is
quickly as
slow.
possible, it's slow. But I always tell people that understanding is power.
You've entered Legal Al, where sharp legal minds meet the power of strategic intuitive intelligence and inner awareness. Hosted by someone that is a veteran, an author, and is an individual experienced in specialist security operations, strategic intuitive intelligence, and transformational psychology, this is not your typical legal podcast. We explore what most lawyers never say out loud: burnout, grief, inner dissonance, and what it really takes to sustain a legal career with clarity, purpose, and personal alignment. Alongside powerful solo insights, you'll hear thought-provoking conversations with members of the Help Lawyer Network, lawyers, legal support professionals, and expert witnesses, sharing real stories from the front lines. This is the space where law meets what's rarely talked about. Welcome to Legal Al, where wisdom meets the law and strategic intuitive intelligence guides the way.
Well, good afternoon or good evening or even good morning, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen who's listening here. This is John from Legal Owl. I'm so delighted to be back with everyone today. And I feel a lot better. The last couple of episodes, I was probably smothering, and now I seem a bit more normal. So I might have the odd cough here. Anyway, I'm really excited about today's show because we're diving into something. We're kind of leaving the experts and all that kind of stuff. We're diving into something that's not really known much of, and it kind of is it in estate planning? I don't know, but this is about when someone is grieving, they're lost, they've lost a loved one, or they're moving forward in life, and maybe they just don't know where they are financially. They need a bit of legal assistance to deal with things that come up in terms of insurances. My guest today is Stephanie Prestridge, who is an attorney. With her and her husband, they run a fantastic service, a legal practice called Life Claim. And when I saw this, I was quite struck because I deal with grief and grief with lawyers and grief in the world. I'm very well known for that. And this is something I get asked about a lot when I'm dealing with potential clients, or even if I'm helping a lawyer with grief. Is there's an element to this that people don't know where to turn. Well, maybe now we have a solution that I didn't really know existed because I'm not in that field. So my guest is Stephanie Prestridge. I can't wait to bring her on. Let's bring her on and we'll talk now and have a great conversation. Steffi, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm better, as I said just before when we were chatting. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit more normal. So I'm excited about today's discussion on legal oil because this is really important. Not only does it cover the need for lawyers, and I want to talk a little bit more about how you got involved in this side of things, how you became a lawyer and what you do, because you kind of champion the case for people who are probably suffering through the loss of loved ones, gone through the grieving, and they just don't know where to turn. So let's talk a little bit about you and the history, how you got into the law and your passion now.
Absolutely. Well, my story is a little convoluted. I went to law school and straight out of law school got a fantastic position with a well-regarded defense firm. And I was doing international trade defense and maritime defense, which is a completely different world of practice. And I had done really well. I was sitting in this incredible office. I had this window of, wall of windows where I could see the Mississippi River behind me. I had the wall in front of me, had every award I had ever won, every, diploma, star, degree, just in case I forgot. And I needed that, right, to remind me of my own greatness.
You need to
And
feel
I
part of something. You need to
Yes.
be.
Yes, just in case. And I got a phone call from my grandmother. I call her Mama. So Mama calls me and I remember I'm sitting at my desk and I'm working on something and she calls me and "Hey Mama, I'm at work. Is everything okay?" And she says that Papa, my grandfather, has just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And she said, "I need to know what what are we going to do?" And I wanna pause right there and share that I was one of the first in my family to go straight from high school to college, from college to a graduate degree. And so there's, obviously there's a lot of family pride in that, but there's also a lot of expectation because there's a lot of people saying, well, you've had all these opportunities. When we come to you with these questions, we expect you to know. And
Mm.
at that moment, it hit me that for the people who mattered most, for the situations that mattered most, I didn't have a clue how to help her. And I remember telling her, I was like, "Well, Mama, call mom. You know, my mom's a nurse." I was like, "Call mom. Mom's a nurse. She'll tell you which facilities are best, who has the best food. You know, call these people. They'll talk to you about your money." And she very, very quickly put me in my place, which she still does today. She's very proud of it. Um, but she very quickly put me in my place and she said, "I didn't ask you where do we go. I asked you, what are we going to do?
Wow.
What about our home? What about our investments? What about the kids? What
What
are
a
we going
distinction.
to do?" Right?
Wow.
And I didn't know. I mean, how devastating is that? I'm sitting here looking at this wall of all the things I did right, except for the one person that I love more than anything in this world. I can't answer her question. And so
How did
it was
that
life
make you
changing.
feel inside? I mean, that must have destroyed you inside a little
It,
bit.
it did a little. I mean, I was aware that not every lawyer has every answer. You know,
No.
not every doctor has every answer. Logically, I was aware of that. Emotionally, you work this hard, you study all of this information and you are now in this position where one of your favorite people, you don't know how to
Mm.
answer their question. Like you don't even know where to begin on how to answer their question.
Wow.
So for me, that was really humbling. And that's good. I probably needed humbling. We all do every now and again.
I get
Um,
humbled a lot.
yes, so do I.
My wife humbles
Um,
me a lot, actually.
oh, I have kids. Kids humble me every day. Um, but I did something kind of drastic. I ended up moving back to my hometown to help take care of my grandparents. And in doing that, I was smart enough to know that I couldn't be their lawyer, right? Because I
Mm.
didn't know everything I needed to do to help them. So I helped them find a lawyer, and then I proceeded to drive their lawyer bananas. And I do mean I literally drove him bananas.
I can
I must have
imagine.
called him, emailed him, and at one point he actually called me and he said it, if you were thinking about sending me another email. And I was like, actually, I'm so glad you called because and he says, no, no, no. If you have any more questions, I have 3 files sitting on a desk. Show up and work them. So he gave me a job, and I took the job. And that lawyer is very, very smart, very, very capable, ran in a very good firm. And I say all of that because at the same time, how I interacted with that firm and how I learned was very different because I started on the other side of the table, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
You
I
went
would,
from being respected and having all of that
mhm,
history to something new.
yeah.
What a
And
change.
it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that I, didn't have a clue what to do, but I also was walking in with my grandmother and my mom
Wow.
is remains one of the smartest women I know, and she's fierce. I have watched her make a general cow. Like she has literally brought them down. And she's just a leader by default. She is
Wow.
incredibly smart, incredibly capable, and I watched this woman who is independent and brilliant become afraid and small. And
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
quite a
sitting
contrast, and it's quite scary
right?
that to see someone that you hold such in high
Mhm.
esteem to witness
Right.
the fear in them.
Right. And she was scared. And I remember looking at the lawyers who were working this and sitting there with her, and they're doing what good lawyers do. Yes, we know what your problem is. Yes, we have a solution for this problem, and we're going to do one, two, three. I need you to sign here, here, and here. And it was all, neatly wrapped up with a bow, except she was scared. And she
Aye.
still didn't understand everything. She
Yeah.
knew she needed to trust her lawyer. She knew she needed to do what she was told, but she was scared. And I wasn't okay with that. And when I returned to the other side of the table working with clients in estate planning matters, I carried that with me. And
Yeah.
I started being very cautious in how I gave information, and not that I limited information, but I would always joke and tell them, I'm blonde, and so I'm going to put this in blonde terms because I can use really big legal words, and but it's not going to change, it's not going to make a difference if you don't understand it. So if you feel like I'm bringing it down to too small of a level, you let me know, because I want to make sure that when you walk out of here, you can sit next to somebody in church and say, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it changed that conversation. And I also made it a practice. In fact, I wouldn't take a client unless they had other advisors. So if they had a financial advisor, insurance advisor, I made it a practice to only work as part of the team,
Right.
because one of the things that scared her the most is she has a lawyer saying, well, we need to make a change to this account and this beneficiary and these different items. Um, and she was required to take that information and translate it for her advisor, who was just as scared as she was at that point
Oh,
because they didn't know
jeez.
what we were doing or why. And so it really changed how I talked to my clients, and it changed how I approached any case as a team. And it was so beautiful. It was a beautiful practice, and I loved it, and my business grew. So I started there as an estate attorney, really loving my clients and working with them. I still love my clients. They bring me cookies and chocolate.
You
Um,
know, I
and
said to you when I met you, I was like, you've got an
Mhm.
amazing, compassionate, loving
Oh, I love my
nature.
people.
Like with your
Yeah.
and I met some lawyers. Like I'm like, wow, I
Mhm.
wouldn't want, that don't like they really don't at all. And uh, I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing because this is why you're doing what you
Mhm.
do, which
Exactly.
excites me.
Exactly. And then, so as my practice grew, we had a case where we did an estate plan for a couple. We knew that the husband was going to pass away, that he had cancer. We knew that there was nothing we could do to prevent that. But we needed to do an estate plan that accounted for his, young adult children, or like, still teen, but not quite adult children. And then, an ex-spouse and a current spouse and a business. And so a lot of moving pieces. And we created a very easy, but, sufficient estate plan that really balanced on the life insurance that they had. So
Yeah.
we knew that we were going to need that money to um, take care of the kids and provide for them the way they wanted. We knew we were going to need some cash to wind down the business if it wasn't completed before he passed. And then also to help his, surviving widow to make sure that she was okay in the future. And it was a beautiful plan. It was going to work great. When he passed, she called me and I said, okay, where's the life insurance? Have you already submitted the application, to have that sent to you? Have you already received it? Have you put it in the bank account? Where's that money? And she said, funny enough, the insurance company sent me a letter and it said that they weren't going to pay this. And they sent me this check that's returning the premiums that, we put into this policy. And she was like, do I need to deposit that check? And I was like, no,
Wow.
absolutely not. Do not deposit that check. And then bring all of this to me. And I'm looking at it and I'm sitting there with my husband, he is the best attorney. I'm so proud of him. He's just such an amazing attorney.
And at one
Um,
point, we're going to get you both on Legal
One day,
Owl.
yeah, yeah. Then you're gonna realize how much smarter he is. But we were sitting there looking at this, and I was flabbergasted. And that's a true feeling, true world, because I had no idea that that could happen. I'm a lawyer who works in estate planning, and I had no idea that this
Wow,
could
that's
happen, right? And I'm not just a lawyer who does estate plans. I'm a lawyer who actually likes life insurance. And there's plenty of people who don't, and their reasons make sense. I just happen to like it, So I'm looking at it going, oh my gosh, not only can this happen, but oh my gosh, I have like all of this life insurance, at home. Could this really happen again? It was how could I be unaware? And then two, what am I going to do? And so I
wow.
am I am not the litigator in our firm. I don't like to fight very
That's your
often.
husband that does the fighting,
Oh,
doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
He likes that.
He's scrappy. Yes, he's scrappy. And he looked at it and he was immediately angry, right? He's like, "This isn't okay. This is not how it's supposed to work.
Well,
Like you had
yeah.
this policy, you were checked out, you did all of the health questionnaire, you did everything you were supposed to do, you paid for this policy. This is not how it's supposed to work." So he challenged that. And, we sat down and looked at options, and I will be the first to admit I was like, "Babe, I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't I didn't know it could happen, so I have no idea." And
Can I
he's
can
like,
I ask you before you
"Mhm."
kind of what was their reasoning behind this?
He was in a 2-year contestability period. So a lot of people don't know, when you get life insurance, for the first 2 years, they call that a contestability period. So if you pass away within the first 2 years of owning that policy, they reserve the right to go back and check all of your medical history all over again. And what they're really looking for is a basis to say, "Hey, wait, had we known this, we would not have issued that policy."
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So, we
Yeah.
were in that
Yeah.
2-year contestability period, and so we pushed back, and my husband, sent a very strongly worded letter, and they sent a very strongly worded letter back to him. But it was interesting because, they told in that letter all of the reasons why they were right and he was wrong, and that they can't believe that he challenged them, and, "Oh, by the way, here's your check for this policy, the entire policy." And it was that moment where he looked at me and he said, "We're never gonna let this happen again, because if
I
it can
love that
happen."
because that is the
Yeah.
deciding the whole paradigm
Mhm.
shifts
Yes, exactly.
and your
And
whole
s
ontology shifts. Just an
Exactly.
ontological shock, and boom, you're gone.
Exactly. And he made a commitment to grow that practice, and then I was right there with him, working these cases with him, and learning and helping the clients, and it's pretty much become our primary practice at this point. And it's so heartbreaking because so many people don't know. There's so many people who are just like me that had no
Yeah.
idea that this can happen, and then you don't know what to do. And then you couple it with the fact that when you find out something happens, somebody's just passed, right? So now you're grieving, you're stressed, and the funds that were there, that were created to provide financial security or to allow for you to bury your family member, all of a sudden that's being taken away. So not only are we adding to your stress, adding to your financial complications, we are also in some degree like minimizing
Uh,
the value of the life that was insured, because that's how people feel. If you're
it's
not going to
true.
pay this policy, you don't care about my person. And it's not okay.
Hi, if you are a legal expert or an expert witness and you would like to join our exclusive legal community, then connect with me on Help Lawyer and let's have a conversation. Do you know, it's interesting because I know when we connected at first, and I mentioned to you, like, I'm well known for grief. I
Hmm.
research it. I'm writing a thesis on aspects of it. I had so many people come to me in my work in grief counseling, working with people who have lost loved ones, that have said to me, I don't know where to turn. And
Right.
the problem is that they're financially left destitute
Hmm.
because and they don't know how to cope with it. And I didn't have an
Right.
answer. I mean, I have an answer now. I have you guys, but I didn't have an answer. I'm like, look,
Right.
I can help you through your suffering. I can be there. I
Right.
can hold you when you're terrified. But I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't have the answer. And it came to more and more people were like, financially, what do I
Right.
do? And
What do
now
I
I'm
do?
finding that this is a big problem,
Hmm.
bigger
Much bigger.
than
Yeah.
I even thought it was.
Exactly, exactly. It's heartbreaking to see how common a problem it is, where it doesn't matter if it's a small policy or a huge policy. People have relied on them. They've held them for a very long time. It's almost like a core component of their entire estate, and they look at it with pride, or with purpose. It has a reason for being there, or they're very proud that they were maintaining that. I've seen cases where people, would cut back on other expenses, but they kept that life insurance policy because they knew it was going to take care of their family in those circumstances. And then to be told that, we're not going to pay it, or we're going to challenge if it's being paid, or we don't like something, so we're going to go back and review if we can find a foothold to not pay it.
Can
No
that
one is
happen? I've heard this before. I could be wrong, but there's been cases, I believe, where insurance companies have said we're not paying for this because it was an act of God. Case in point, we went through Helene here, that devastated. A lot of people lost. Now, people had life insurance policies and they lost their loved ones. Now, I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but insurance companies weren't paying for property and others. And I did hear at certain points that life insurance policies weren't being paid either because they were saying it was an act of God. It wasn't an illness. It wasn't, and it was an act of God. Is that a particular problem?
So I have to tell you, both life and death are an act of God. So I don't think that the life insurance company would have had
That's
a
what I
leg to
thought.
stand on, right?
Yeah.
On that. But I think maybe what you heard, the life insurance should have paid out, regardless if it's an act of
Yeah.
God, if a tree fell on you, if a flood got you. It's not the same as property insurance, right? Where they come in and say it was an act of God, we're not going to pay
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
event. Life insurance is literally, if you've got it and it's in good state, when someone passes away, allegedly it's going to pay out, right?
Right.
But a lot of people confuse accidental death and dismemberment policies with traditional life insurance policies.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
accidental death policies are very, very restrictive in nature, saying, if you pass away in an accident, and oh, by the way, we're going to define what an accident means. And it does not always mean what you
That
think
makes
it
sense.
means.
Right.
So in that case, the insurance company, I feel very comfortably confident that this is probably what happened, where people were trying to make a claim on their accidental death policy, and the
Probably.
companies would have come in and said it was an act of God, it was not an accident, and therefore we will not pay.
That's what do they typically, Steph? What do they typically push back on? What is the main thing that they will push back on? Is it that 2-year period, or is there any other issues? Like, do they go back in and think, well, that illness didn't cause this,
Mhm.
or what is it?
It depends on the type of policy, but some of the most common ones are you're in that 2-year contestability period,
Right.
right? A lot of times when they're checking the status of a policy, they'll come in and say, we don't think this policy was current. Like, were you maintaining your premiums and doing that properly? Or they'll come in and say, we've got concerns because there were a significant number of beneficiary changes all of a sudden.
Oh,
So they're really looking at the status of the policy, the status of your health, the cause of death. So if they think your death is suspicious or it occurred in a suspicious location,
oh,
they'll
right. Okay.
delay or deny paying out those benefits, right? Um,
Wow.
Sometimes people just call up and say, I don't think that that's who the beneficiary was intended to be. We want to challenge this. And so at that point, the life insurance company will say, wait, there's a challenge. We're not exactly sure who we need to pay here. So they'll hold those funds and just wait for everybody to figure out what they're supposed to do. Health and medications are typically the things that we see quite often, especially when we're looking at accidental death policies. A lot of people don't know that you can fight those, and they're I don't know. It hurts because people have them, and then they'll be told, well, you can't. We're not going to pay for it. It's not an accident, or it didn't happen the way we expected, or we think your premium wasn't done just right. And they stop fighting because they don't know that they have a choice, or if they try to fight on their own. This is so common here lately that they will try to use AI to help them, respond to the questions. And this is interesting. At this point, we're seeing it happen. We're actually having the life insurance companies tell us we're seeing this happen, and they're gleeful about it, because what sounds really good to you when you're reading it and thinking, okay, these are all of these wonderful arguments. It sounds fabulous. It really is not addressing any of the problems, right? So you'll send it off to the life insurance company. They'll deny it, as they're looking at it going, you didn't answer our questions. You didn't do what we needed to do.
Wow.
And then when someone tries to appeal, they don't know the rules, and the rules change with the different types of policies. So whether it's, a personal policy, a work related policy, an accidental death policy, all of the rules are different. And when you don't know the rules and you're relying on AI to draft your briefs, it's making it so much easier for the life insurance companies to deny these benefits. It's to the point. My husband has a theory. He says, I actually think that the push to use AI in these appeals is being done by the life insurance companies because
I
it's
was
so
gonna
beneficial to them,
I was going to
right?
ask that because I mean, I did an episode
Mhm,
on Legal Ill where I talked about AI, where
mhm,
I said this is not. I see it everywhere, like in our Instagram channel for Help
mhm,
Lawyer and for Legal Ill. I see it all the time. AI for this case, AI for
right,
the next case, AI for personal injury. I'm like,
mhm,
are lawyers now just turning and getting all their work done through AI as well? And who's driving this? Because who's benefiting?
right,
Is
exactly.
the lawyer
So
really benefiting, or is this getting pushed by another organization?
I think AI has its place, and I don't want to push people away from it. I just want
No, I
them to
use it, but
understand how it works,
properly.
and right, and so using it to fight a company or using it to file your appeal, if you don't know the right questions to ask, then AI cannot provide the best assistance because you don't know the rules, and AI is not going to be able to go find every single set of rules for you to use in each particular case. So you've got a very um, particular topic where you've got to find out which questions do I need to ask, which deadlines do I need to follow, how do things need to be submitted, how long is this going to take? Um, you are set up to fail if you don't have someone who lives in that world and can help you and guide you through that process.
I think it's important as well for, especially for you, Steph, and your husband, that there's an element there where taking AI aside is
Mhm.
there's little compassion. The AI is
Mhm.
just data. It's human
Right,
centric. It has to be put
right.
in by. It's just identifying what is out there that a human has put in, and it's scraped that data. But you're dealing with people's emotions and their
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
And there has to be something very unique to that because, as you've said, you're very compassionate. You love your clients. It must be hard as well for you to see the suffering in those
Mhm.
people when they come to you.
It is. I will say that I'm extremely blessed because my husband and I are a good balance with each
Mm.
other. He is very much so the strategist and the litigator. I'm good at that, but he shines in that.
Yeah, he's really good.
And so he carries a lot of that burden. He is also very quiet, and while he loves people, he also loves to be in a quiet room by himself and do his work. So I carry a lot of the client load
Right.
because I love them and I care about them. And sometimes it is overwhelming. I talk to crying people every single day,
Yeah.
and but I just love them. You know, even if it's a stranger. I had someone send me an email this morning saying, "You didn't have to call me. What I needed had nothing to do with the services you provide, but you called me, and I'm so thankful for it." And I just feel
That's
like
just such a
not
small thing, though, that makes a massive
right,
difference,
right, and
especially
it
when they're
doesn't matter.
grieving.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whether you're a lawyer or just just somebody down the road, it just it carries a huge toll and it does take time, but I'm able to do that because of the balance in our firm. So we've got people who carry, those loads. And it's also neat because like we have nurses on staff who work with us. And not just any nurses, we actually have this amazing group of former emergency room nurses. So they saw everything and their compassion and their ability to have
That's
insight
phenomenal.
into people is they're amazing. I love watching them work, and there are times when I will say, "This client doesn't need to hear from me. I need one of our nurses to call them." And to this day, I have emails from people saying, "Hey, I love you, but I really wanna talk to, Nurse Summer or Nurse Chris," and it's really I love that. I love that we can provide that community.
I find it remarkable how you've approached this. And I think, I mean, I didn't know that you had nurses that were on staff and
Mhm.
stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
and when anybody's watching this, you maybe look at Steph and you hear about her husband and you think that this is just her and a secretary, but you actually have
Mhm.
a full
We
staff,
do.
nurses and
We
everything,
have a
which
full
is
staff.
phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah,
And as I'm
we
thinking about this and I'm talking to you, and I think about those who are going through the grieving process who have lost a loved one, we tend to think that they're older in life and they're getting to that point. But what I want to ask you is that the case? Is it mainly older people, or are you finding now that this is even in our younger generation? And should we be prepared more than what we are?
Absolutely, we should be prepared more. I'm seeing a lot of parents burying their children. In fact, the before I came to visit with you, the 4 cases sitting on my desk are all parents burying their children,
That's
either from
heartbreaking.
homicide or from, alleged overdoses or using prescription medication according to the prescription, but, they
Yeah.
still pass away. Um, I'm seeing more and more parents burying more of their children. Um, and there are, obviously still the elderly and those particular cases, but I can't say that it's an equal balance in
No,
our
not now.
cases. We take all kinds that and the ones where the parents are worried about their kids, that those are hard. Those are hard.
I was going to say, how do you how do you deal and cope with that personally yourself as a family oriented woman and mother, and how do you
You
cope with that
just
when someone who's lost their daughter or their son through a tragedy or even an illness, and they have got no finance, they don't know where they're turning, they may have a lapse policy. And let me ask you this: if they have a lapse policy, can you still help them?
Not much, not
No.
much.
So
It
they
it
need to keep
depends
up
if
their
it's
policies.
oh, yes. Sometimes we'll look at a lapse policy if, like, it's been less than 30 days. And I mean,
Okay.
those are hard. Those are super hard,
Wow.
but we'll fight those sometimes. But, you know, I get emails all the time where people are saying, "It was supposed to come out of my checking account, and I don't know why they didn't take it out of my checking account, and now they say it's lapsed, and oh my gosh, how did this happen? Is there anything you can do?" And at that point, it's too far gone.
Wow.
And then another thing that happens a lot, and this is really important. Sometimes, someone will miss a payment for whatever reason, and they'll catch that they missed their payment, and they'll call the life insurance company and they'll say, "Gosh, wait, this happened. Can you please, re-pull this funds out of my account? Can you reinstate my policy? Can we do what we need to do?" And the insurance company will quite often say, "Yes." And they'll reinstate that policy and you'll, make your premiums again.
Okay.
But what they don't understand is that the minute they reinstated that policy, that 2-year
I was
contestability
going to
period
ask that.
started
See,
all over. Mhm.
I wondered that. I thought that's where you were going, because that's the
Right.
restart. But how many people know that? They don't know that.
Nobody
Because if
knows
I
that
was in
because
that case and I
yeah.
lost it, and I phoned up and said, "Oh my God," I would just expect them to start and it would be okay.
Mhm. Yeah, reinstated. That's what they hear. Well, no, we said it was reinstated. So what do you mean that it's like we started all over? Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
If you're a lawyer, then I invite you to consider joining our exclusive legal network on Help Lawyer. Just send me a message and we will book a time to have a private conversation together. What is the worst case that you and your husband, or let me reframe that. What is the most heartfelt case that you have had, without,
Mhm.
compromising anybody's identities or anything, but what's the most heartfelt case that you've fought and won?
Um, I've got 2 for me. I'll share his. He had a case where, there was a homicide, and for 17 years, the police department maintained a spouse as a person of interest. Now, this spouse in no way could have committed this crime at all. Just no way. But they didn't want to amend their persons of interest list. So for 17 years, she was denied those benefits until he was able to step in and say, "This is unacceptable."
Wow.
In this case, we had a spouse with a significant disability that rendered that person completely incapable of committing the alleged crime.
Wow.
But 17 years, and she didn't know. She was grieving and trying to just make it day to day until finally 17 years later, he steps in and says, You have rights. We have to fight for this." And he did. And
And
I
he
was
won
so
it.
proud of him for that. Oh yeah, of course.
I can't wait to speak to him
His
about that myself, actually.
He's really cool. So the other two are also his cases, but I worked with him on these. One of them was an accidental death case, and he particularly loves working those cases because people have them and they're denied all the time. Like
Are they really? So
somebody
accidental
all
death
the
is
time,
always denied.
always denied, always denied. And he loves them because he fights back with them and he gets them paid. It's
Does your
just
husband
he
play
has
chess?
he does
I
he
knew
does.
that.
Yeah, he's good. He's quite the
He's
strategist.
competitive.
Oh, yes, yes, he's my favorite person, but, he, had a case where, it was an accidental death policy, a man allegedly was drinking and, had a motorcycle accident and was killed. Parents are trying to recover both the life insurance and the accidental death policy. Insurer says, "Nope, we believe there was alcohol in his system and we're not paying."
Wow.
And Michael was able to fight that and just dispute that and he won. And it was a hard win, but he won. And
That's
he gave
phenomenal.
me I'm so proud of him. But he gave me the pleasure of calling the family and telling them that, and they knew me because I'd worked with them, on
Yeah.
the appeal and talked to them about, their child and information. But he allowed me to call them and let them know we won, that they
That's
reversed and we
amazing. That's
won.
getting me goosebumps, actually.
I
I
I was
love
so
that.
excited, and it was actually really, really fun because, there was a surviving sibling, and I think that person's looking to get married in the next, year or 2, and I told the family, I was like, "Look, we've become close over all this time. I have this thing in my family where when someone gets married, I always buy their shoes. Like, that's just my thing. I'll buy your shoes. I don't care if you want flip-flops. I don't care if you want a pair of Louboutins. I'm gonna buy
Really?
your
That's
shoes.
great.
That's it. I'm gonna
That's
buy your
amazing.
shoes." And everybody's gonna be calling you for me to buy shoes now, but, that's just my
Any
thing.
listeners out there, if
Right,
you need new
right.
shoes for your wedding.
You gotta get married, but, I said, when your daughter gets married, I would like to buy her shoes."
Oh,
And it
wow.
just,
That's
and
amazing.
they were so sweet. They were like, "That's just amazing," but I just that's how we get close, And
I love that.
just as a side note, I do not buy shoes for every person who asks, just saying. But, um, and then the other one that was special to me, um, this is one where I just love this client. I became friends with this client. Her husband had passed. There was a huge dispute in the family over his mental status, and it was what was done to her was not okay. It was heartbreaking,
Oh,
and
wow.
she was fighting not because she wanted to keep all of the policy benefits, but because that was her way of holding on to her spouse, right?
I get
And
that because you'll
yeah.
hold on to anything that's
Mhm.
connected, and it's very
Exactly.
hard to let go.
Mhm. And it was one where, we ended up going to trial and sitting there with her, and in the end, the right thing was done. There was a settlement, on the eve of trial, and she felt like she was letting her deceased spouse down because she settled,
Ah, God love her.
and I just remember sitting there with her going, "But you're free. You're free,
Yeah.
and now we can celebrate his life, and you can grieve because you haven't grieved this whole time." And
Mm.
I just, I don't know, I've kept in touch with her, and she called me at one point, she was like, "You're right, I needed to grieve, and, but she's getting better," and I just,
It's
it's
important,
just
I
beautiful.
think, for people to realize that we often can't grieve because
Mhm.
of the financial
Right,
instability that loved ones are left behind in. And that is not a healthy thing because
right,
now we have the possibility of, eh, developing psychosis, other mental illnesses. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but I have known of people who have, taken
mm,
their own lives because
right,
they can't cope. And financially, they can't cope. And I think that's important to realize that the quicker that you can be proactive rather than
mhm,
reactive, it saves all this problem.
right, right. And I would note as a, a tag to that is that we can't make a process go faster, right? Anything that has to
No,
involve a lawyer is, unfortunately, it's slow. Even though we try to move very quickly and we try to handle everything
it
as
is
quickly as
slow.
possible, it's slow. But I always tell people that understanding is power, right?
Yeah,
And so as we go through this process, I can't make you any promises as to whether we'll win or we'll lose or what's going to happen. But I can promise you that as we go through this process, whether it's me or one of our nurses or my husband or whomever you talk to, we're going to sit there and make sure that, do you understand where we are right now? This is why we're doing what we're doing so that you feel like you have some power in this process. It's,
I love
you don't
that.
have
You're
to carry
giving
the
them.
weight of it, but
Yeah,
you do have an understanding of why I'm here and why we're having to do this next thing. And that's probably in a very hard process. That's one of the best gifts I can give is just knowing
that's
you don't have
phenomenal.
to carry the burden of it, but I want to give you the gift of understanding why we're doing it.
Steffi, do the insurance companies deliberately hold things up in the hope that somebody will give up?
I think so. Um,
I mean, you've got no
yeah,
proof of that, but again,
I,
this is an assumption, but it seems like a good assumption to me.
it is if Michael were here, my husband, he would say absolutely. Um, I I tend to, like I see the companies and then I see the people in the companies. And
The
so like
benefit of the doubt.
I think that I think like the company, yes, I think the company's doing whatever is necessary for their bottom line.
Yeah.
I think that there are good people inside of those companies. So it's harder for me to say, yes, they're doing this deliberately and they're all villains because I think the corporate culture
Hmm.
is terrible. I think that they're there for business.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't wanna
Absolutely.
vilify all the people that work in those companies, though I think my husband would be the first to say, "Yes, they're all terrible." But, I
I,
think it's business. They're conducting business.
as you know, when we spoke before as well, I told you I have a military background, and
Mhm,
so I'm very, very passionate about my brothers and sisters in arms. And I've
mhm.
come across, and I don't know if whether you and your husband deal with this, but I've come across so many times with spouses who have or have lost their loved ones on the battlefield. Have you
Mhm.
had any cases where you've had to fight the corner for the military folks?
Yes. So we've had to fight a number of FEGLI, SIGLI, base claims. We weren't necessarily fighting. Well, actually, we were fighting the military. In one case, this is Michael's story. He'll tell it much better than me. But it was a case where the service member was just trying to update their beneficiaries, and they did it properly. There's a very specific process that you have to do, and it's from completing the paperwork to handing it off to the right, person next in line, and then it has to be submitted.
Yeah.
This person did all of the right things except the person who received it. The right person who received it lost the original paperwork. And so insurance company said, "We're not going to pay. Didn't follow the right process. Not going to happen." And I mean, it was
Gee.
ridiculous. We had affidavits from, all of the people saying, "Nope, the paper was completed, it was
Yeah.
turned in, it was done this way," had an affidavit from the person who received it, the right ranking person who received and said, I believe I put it here, but if there was a loss, it's my fault, not the service member's fault." Um, that should never have happened. That should never have happened.
No, absolutely
So
not.
we did have to fight to get that one. We did win. Well, Michael won that one. That one was all his. But that's one of those ridiculous. And I get form over substance. Like, and that's a really important thing to note is that form is often more important than substance with
Uh,
this. So that form of, did you fill out the right paperwork? Did you sign it properly? Did you check the right
That could
box?
be the
Did you give
make or
it to the
break in
right person?
something.
Yes. And so they were saying, well, no, 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 based on form, there's no policy, we're not paying. And we're like, no, 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 wait, we got you, but we followed the substance of the form here. And like anything that happened was not that person's fault. So you're gonna penalize the person who did everything right. And
Yeah.
and it wasn't the right thing to do. And in other cases with military policies, we've worked with families where there was a dispute on who should be paid and who were the beneficiaries or was it done properly. So a lot of times it's fighting as versus necessarily just
Yeah, I was
fighting
going to ask that as well
the
as the
insurance
potential
company.
infighting in the families that can
Oh
hold things
yeah.
up.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that the potential probably one of the worst problems?
It's very, very common. Very, very common. I would probably say that health and challenges to medical status is probably one of the most common, but right there behind it are family disputes.
Wow. How do you cope
Yeah.
with the family disputes then? Because obviously that could really I mean, it can hurt the work
Well,
that you're
we can
doing.
we can only represent one side of the family. So,
No, exactly. I know you
so
can't represent everybody, but
right.
is there some tells? Is there some behavior that you go into a case and you know that this is coming?
So usually when we see them, that dispute's already exploded, right?
It's already gone,
Um,
right?
so as an estate attorney, I'll take that step back and say that a lot of times when people would come to me to do like their will or their trust or anything along those lines before we had a tragedy of somebody passing, you always ask them, what's going on? Tell me what you're worried about. Tell
Yeah,
me what you're excited about. Tell me what are the things that need to keep happening if you're not here. Who has this strength, who has this particular weakness. Tell me about your people. And most lawyers, I think, start with tell me about your property and then tell me
yeah,
about
that's
your
true.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
I need to know about your people because your property is going to go. And it's either going to be great or it's going to be bad, but your property is going to go. But how your people work, and did we
mm,
account for their strengths? Did we account for their weaknesses? You know, let's talk about your people so that we know how to best protect your property. And, I will sit with families that will talk about, well, we're going to name our son and our daughter, and they both have to agree. And I always ask them, do they get along at Thanksgiving? Like, do you have
that
a good, fun
that's
family
a big
Thanksgiving?
giveaway.
Right. And
Yeah,
how many people are like, well, no. I was like, do they fight over the gravy? Because if they fight over the gravy, I don't want them to have to agree on whether or not you receive medical treatment because it's going to fail. You're going to die
wow,
waiting for them to agree on something. So it's asking good questions at the right time. And I would note that when these disputes happen, it's not because people are bad people. There are
yeah,
some bad people, but I think that unresolved relationships are the biggest problems that we
they
see.
are.
So,
Yeah,
so when you have siblings that have an issue that haven't been resolved, when you've got parents that fed into a bad problem, or
mm,
if parents did some action or siblings did some action and it was never addressed or discussed, or if changes were made and at least people weren't advised that, hey, I'm paying attention. I'm not going
hmm,
to tell you everything I own or everything I've done, but I want you to know I've made some changes, and whether you like it or you don't, I love you. Like,
yeah,
all of that matters, and I can't make that up for somebody. Michael can't make that up for somebody when
yeah.
we're in the middle of a war trying to, protect these benefits or get these benefits. So, I think that's the hardest thing for me is having to make up for conversations that weren't had when they should have been had.
And I think if within the family dynamic, there's always a lot of guilt and shame,
Mhm.
and when that comes into it, then that causes even further deeper disputes. And I
I d
think then when they get into the
Yeah.
process of dealing with a loved one, either do you shut off
Mm.
the machine, or how they
Mhm.
deal, or they split up the estate. That they're driven by their emotion rather than anything else.
Absolutely. Anger. There's a lot of anger, lots and lots of anger, and I
Do you?
think anger is a replacement for fear. But
Yeah,
people live in
absolutely. No,
anger
it
for a
is.
very
Yeah.
long
Uh huh.
time. Yeah.
Do you ever have any of the family coming at you? I not one that you're representing, but do you ever have family
I
disputes and then the other party tried to get in touch with you to try and plead their case? Or
They've never done that to me. I don't believe they've ever done that to Michael. Because we're very clear from the get go. We send out, letters saying this is our client. You cannot speak directly to our client.
and so they
You have a
don't.
lawyer. Yeah. So we're very, very cut and dry about that. I've had clients that disagreed with me. I and and I'm always the one who takes like the neutral or the opposite perspective. So,
Right.
like I'm going to fight my case, but if you want to sit down and go over, facts. In fact, my nurses, this makes them so mad. They get so mad at me because they'll sit there and say, "Well, I see this and this and this, and this is how we're going to win this case." And I'm like, I don't know if it's a big deal. Like, I think there's a different way to look at that because whatever argument we use, I
Yeah.
want it to be our best.
Yeah.
And I also try very hard to have like just an open perspective to see a different side, so that we don't fall in love with our own position. So I have clients who have been like, I don't want you to say that. I don't want you to say that you understand where this person's coming from. I'm your client and you just need to see my position. And I, always apologize and I'm like, but that's not how I work. And you're gonna be mad if I wasn't prepared for
Yeah.
where they're coming from.
Yeah. You need to know. You need to have the
Yeah,
intelligence on how they're going to
yeah,
operate.
yeah. It's
So,
it's fun.
what about your nurses that you work with now? uh, do you teach them more about the law as well? Do they have an understanding of what they're dealing with?
They learn as they go.
Right.
But they are, man, they're formidable. They are amazing. They they are so smart, and you have to be. I think nurses are just incredible.
Yeah.
And they're so smart because I'll go in and say, okay, here's the problem. Here's why this is being denied. They're saying that, this was like this was an overdose, and instead of like using medication properly, or they're saying that this was a medical event that caused the accident, not the accident that caused the medical event. And so they really just kind of page by page go through these records, and explain things to us where we can look at it. And they've come to me before and said, all right, this is not one where we know how to argue our way out of it. Or hey, we went back and we caught this. And they're really neat because they come at it and they don't just see like the doctor's notes or the medical's records. Like as nurses, they're coming in and they're saying, I know the conversation behind this. And so here's some questions that you should ask,
Yeah.
when
They're
you do a
utilizing their lived
deposition.
experience as
Yeah,
nurses.
exactly, exactly. And they have seen everything in the emergency
Wow.
room. So when they talk, we listen.
How did you pick your nurses? Did you have a particular, what were you looking for in them that you when you said, okay, come and join the firm?
So, I have to admit, one of them is family. My mom, actually, we started with my mom because I was calling her
No
up,
way,
going,
your
"Mom,
mum's your mum.
oh
All
my
right.
gosh,
Wow.
she's okay." So I have to sing her praises. She was the first nurse in the state of
Hi,
Louisiana to
mum.
get 100% on the nurses state bar exam. She's fantastic.
Wow.
And so I would call her and I'm like, Mom, I'm reading these records and I know what an artery is. I know what a vein is. I took this class, but oh my gosh, it's talking about like a liver and a kidney. Are they connected? And she was just like, so she would come sit here and she would go through these records and try to explain them for me. And finally she's like, I'm just going to send Michael an email on what all of this is. And Michael's like, I don't need Stephanie to be your middleman anymore. Just come in. And so we started with her making sure I didn't, make mistakes on veins and arteries and livers and kidneys. Um, and from there, she was so passionate about some of this. And some of it's
Wow.
because, like I have a sister that passed a very long time ago and her life insurance was paid out, but we had to fight for, other parts of her estate. So um I was calling her to make sure I didn't screw up on a document, but it really became something she was passionate about. Particularly with our elder clients who, when we're looking at like issues of, dementia or, changing capacity, whether it's true or not, like that's something that's special to her because she sees it on so many levels with different patients. And so she just has this incredible heart for it. We have another nurse, her name is Summer, and Summer is just quick. Like she is just like um she's one who like reads the room really fast, except she reads those records really fast and she can come in. She's like, I'm telling you where they're going. I'm telling you why they took that particular fact and why they're going here. I don't think it's any different than like a really good triage nurse, right? So
Right.
you look
Yeah.
at it and you see where you're going. Her gift is there. It's amazing to watch her pluck these pieces and then be able to tell a story faster than any of us
Wow.
could. And she also has this beautiful ability to connect with some of our clients and just say, okay, I want you to know that I hear what you're saying. And anything that I'm looking at, anything that I share with you doesn't change what happened. But if you want that time, I'll give it to you. I can't sing their praises enough. We have the best nurse staff.
That's amazing. I'm absolutely, I'm in awe of what you're doing. I mean, I come across a lot of lawyers, but I've never come
Yeah.
across a firm like you guys that are working. I think the work that you're doing is absolutely phenomenal. Before we kind of come to the end of our discussion, I mean, we could keep going on, but before we come to the end of the discussion, how early, what would be the best advice that you would give people now, rather than, because it seems to be there's a lot of this is reactive. You should, you know, positing that things should be proactive from now.
Right. So proactive would be, before someone passes, do you have a life insurance policy? Where is it? Is it through work or is it, a
Yeah.
personal policy? Do we know for certain that the premiums have been paid? Those are just easy questions to ask. Now, I will pause and tell you that a lot of times feathers are ruffled when those questions are asked because there's a lot of families, and I completely respect this, where they're like, "Well, that's my stuff. That's none of your business. I'm still alive. You don't get my stuff yet." And so I feel like it's really important that we acknowledge that, if we're asking these questions, to preface it with, "I'm not trying to go through your sock drawer. I just need to know if
Love
something
that.
happens to you, where do I go?" Right?
Yeah.
And so I would say one of the greatest gifts a family member can leave is like a roadmap saying, "Hey, I bank here. I have this life policy. It's here. You can call this person."
Yeah.
A roadmap is a gift because when somebody passes, you're stressed, you're scared, you're devastated. Um, a roadmap would be such a comfort at that point to
I
just
think
say,
that's
"Okay,"
amazing.
right?
And I would say
Um,
anybody out there that knows from the work that I do in
mhm,
grief, that I would recommend that you have some kind of roadmap, because I've seen
yeah.
more suffering come from the unknown
Yep.
rather
Mhm.
than the known.
Yep. And then I would say when someone does pass, um, one of the most important things you can do is a lot of people submit their own claims, but the minute that they get a pushback, the minute that there's a push for more, or we're not sure about this, or things are being delayed,
Yeah.
at that point, get help. Please don't try to do it on your own. And it's not just because we want to do that for you, but because what's happening is like evidentiary trails are being created.
Yeah.
Things are happening that maybe you don't know is happening, and you're setting yourself up where the fight is harder down the road. Um, and then last bit I would give when somebody passes is when you call the insurance company, a lot of times people will call and ask, "Hey, is this policy still good or is it here?" And when they talk to someone on the phone, it's usually like, it's just the representative, right? So, and their job is very limited. They can look at the screen and say, "Well, yes, here's this policy. And yes, these are the beneficiaries," or "Yes, there are beneficiaries." And then we've had people who are so shocked when later they get a letter or a call saying, "Wait, we have issues with this." When you're on the
Wow.
phone, ask with whom you're speaking. Are you a representative? Are you a claims examiner? And if someone calls you out of the blue and starts asking about what happened, and, gosh, how are they feeling right before all this happened? Do not answer those questions because they are fishing for information that they can
Yeah.
use to deny
They're
or delay your
looking for a
claim.
pattern so they can actually say,
Exactly.
well, you said this and you
Yeah.
denied this.
Mhm.
And I see
It's
this,
so
I see
frustrating.
this in Dobert, however, challenges and expert
Mhm.
witnesses, where they'll say, well, you said this in social media, you said this, and then you
Mhm.
go, well, context is not
Right.
clear. Go back 5 minutes, go back 10
Right.
minutes, and you'll
Exactly.
see whatever was said, or, that thing.
Mhm.
Stephanie, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and your firm.
Absolutely. So our website is lifeclaim.com. So you can go there, or you can email me at stephanie.prestridge@lifeclaim.com. And that's probably the easiest ways to catch us. It would be such a pleasure. Or we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, so you can come find us on
Absolutely.
on that as well.
And you'll get the details in the show notes. So anybody who's
Yes.
listening want to connect with them. And also you'll find them on Help Lawyer as well. You'll be able to connect with them there
Wonderful.
very soon too. Stephanie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And I'm so glad that we actually covered this subject matter. I'm looking forward to having you on my other show where we can discuss this more in the realms of grief. But I think this is
Wonderful.
important. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on The Legal Owl. This is real important. If you're someone out there and you have a loved one who is, if you're in what I call anticipatory grief, if you're waiting on someone to pass, if you're needing advice or you need to get your ducks in a row, then do it sooner rather than later. Please reach out to Steffi and her team at lifeclaim.com and connect with them, because this can save you so much anxiety, so much worry, so much fear. It's the best thing that you can do. And for those of you who are preparing, it could be the best gift and roadmap that you give your family to do this now. Steffi, thank you for being with me in Legal Earl. I'm looking forward to having you on again, and your husband. Can't wait to meet him.
He's wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Legal Owl, brought to you by Help Lawyer. Please make sure you contact us if you've got any questions, or if you want me to direct anything towards Steffi and her husband, then connect with us on Help Lawyer as well. We'll be back very soon. And thank you for joining us today. God bless.
You've been listening to The Legal Owl, where law meets the unseen layers of clarity, leadership, and inner alignment. If this sparks something in you, trust that feeling. Let it lead you. For deeper insights, real conversation, and strategic guidance, connect through the Help Lawyer Network and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you prefer a more private connection, you'll find the path when you're ready. Until next time, stay present, think deeper, and lead wiser.